What's up everyone, and welcome back to Dawn of War Central, and today we've got some really interesting Dawn of War 4 news that could seriously change how fights feel moment to moment in the game. In a recent interview by PC Gamer with King Art Games, who are of course the developers of Dawn of War 4, has revealed a new mechanic that's aimed at making combat smoother, faster, and way less click heavy, while still keeping that classic Dawn of War chaos intact. So let's get into it. Alright, picture the usual Dawn of War scenario: big battle, multiple squads, vehicles rolling around, melee units charging in, explosions going off, and your screen is basically a war zone. You do the standard RTS thing, you drag a box, select your army, and you are ready to give orders. Now that part's been normal forever, but then comes the part where Dawn of War can sometimes get a bit messy. You right-click one enemy squad, and suddenly your entire army piles onto that single target. Half your units are overkilling one squad, while other threats are free to move, flank, or just delete your army. So then you have to start splitting fire manually. Click one squad, tell it to shoot this, click another, tell it to shoot that. Move these guys up, pull these guys back, retarget, reposition, reinforce, repeat. And it's not that micro is bad. Dawn of War has always had micro, of course, but many would argue that the series is at its best when the player is thinking about the bigger battlefield. Positioning, timing, wargear upgrades, where to commit your elite units, where to hold the line, and when to push. That's the kind of more macro decision making that makes Dawn of War feel like Dawn of War for a lot of people. And from what we're hearing about Dawn of War 4, it seems like the game is actually leaning even harder into these bigger choices. Stuff like wargear loadouts, squad customization, and how you set up engagements before the fighting even starts. So the goal isn't to turn the game into some sweaty APM competition where you are forced to babysit every squad 24/7. Instead, it seems like King Art Games wants you to focus on strategy, positioning, and planning, while still giving you the tools to control fights efficiently when things do get chaotic. And this is where the new feature comes in. Jan Taysen, the game director on Dawn of War 4, explains that everyone already knows that you can multi-select units with a dragbox, but in Dawn of War 4, you can also multi-attack enemies by dragging with the right mouse button. Let that sink in for a second, because instead of selecting your army and right-clicking one target, you can right-click drag across a group of enemies and basically tell the game, alright, engage these guys. Now what is interesting is we still don't fully know how the game is going to assign those target priorities once you drag box the enemies. Like, is it actually just going to blanket spread your squad's firepower across your selection? Because if that's the case, you'd still be rewarded for microing the old school way, since in a lot of situations, you actually want to focus fire and delete enemy squads quickly instead of spreading damage everywhere and letting everything survive longer. But on the other hand, if the system is smarter than that, like if it automatically assigns just enough of your squads to kill one enemy unit at a time while minimizing overkill, then Dawn of War 4 is basically doing a lot of the mental workload for you. And now that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it would definitely be in a different direction. It would show that the game is leaning harder into macro play and bigger decision making, where the real skill comes from positioning, unit choices, wargear setups, and ability timing rather than non-stop target switching micro. Either way, the really important part is you still have control. You can still jump in and optimize the fight afterwards. You can say, okay, these squads should hit the infantry on the right flank, but these guys need to focus on the vehicle. So hopefully it's not automation, it's not the game playing itself, it's just smarter command input. And that really is massive, because it tackles one of the oldest RTS problems: the constant tug of war between focusing fire and keeping your army efficient. Normally, if you don't micro, your units can waste damage and just generally do dumb stuff. If you do micro, you're forced into a lot more clicks, constantly reissuing commands, like you're managing 10 different fights at the same time, and for a lot of people, that puts up a high barrier to entry to real-time strategy games. But this new Dawn of War 4 system could basically give you a middle ground. You could issue a broad command first, let your army engage intelligently, and then focus your attention on the more important stuff, like where you want to push, which flank is collapsing, which wargear upgrades you are committing to, and when to reinforce or retreat. In my opinion, this is a really interesting direction to be heading in, and so I guess this has huge potential to feel like warfare, not like you're manually directing every bullet. Having said that, combining this with the combat director system that we've previously talked about, I'm kind of interested to see how engaged you will really feel with each battle. Honestly, with so many uncharted territories with this, I think it's going to be one of those things where you have to try it to understand it. In any case, King Art Games says that this mechanic is part of their overall goal to reduce the number of clicks that you have to issue, and this could be a good sign. Because of course there is a big difference between simplifying an RTS and just removing unnecessary friction. Cutting down on repetitive clicking, it can shift skill towards smarter decision making. Now, the PC Gamer article also mentions some other additions that are going to stand out to longtime fans. One big one is reinforcement control. Apparently, Dawn of War 4 will let you toggle on infinite reinforcements before a unit even loses a model, just as was possible in Dawn of War 1. Having this ability to pre-toggle reinforcements means that your squads can stay topped up automatically, letting you focus more on positioning and engagements instead of constantly staring at health bars. Again, it's not necessarily removing overall strategy, it's just reducing micro busywork. And then there's another change that a lot of RTS players are going to appreciate instantly: the camera controls. Jan Taysen talks about how it drove him insane when he played Dawn of War Definitive Edition, because you had to edge scroll the camera by pushing your cursor to the side of the screen. More importantly, you couldn't change it. No options, no alternatives. So in Dawn of War 4, they've added a WASD based camera system, and that is a huge quality of life upgrade, because if you've played modern RTS games, WASD camera movements can feel more natural for some, more responsive, and makes repositioning your view during battles much faster, making the whole game feel more modern. Personally, to be honest, I'm more of an old school type, and am far more used to using the mouse edge scrolling or clicking on the minimap. But of course, I can see how WASD could appeal to a lot of people. Either way, the main thing is that now you get a choice. So, overall, what does this all tell us about Dawn of War 4? It tells us that the game is going bigger battles, more of a focus on unit options, wargear choices, and more battlefield variety. But instead of forcing players into non-stop micro just to keep up, they are adding systems that let you command your army more efficiently. And that's important because if Dawn of War 4 really is leaning into more macro decisions, like how you build your squads, what war gear you equip, where you position your forces, and how you approach engagements, then it kind of needs mechanics like this multi-attack dragbox to give you the time and space to breathe and make these bigger decisions. I guess it's looking to keep the pacing fast of the game without turning it into a clickfest. You still have to out-strategize your opponent, and you'll have to do it through better planning and positioning instead of just brute forcing it with APM. Honestly, I'm not totally sure if it's the kind of real-time strategy game that I necessarily like, considering I do really like micromanaging my engagements. But to be honest, that's more of a me issue. I really am looking forward to trying something new and something that I think will be pretty popular. Now, the article does also mention that further details from this interview will be coming soon, so of course I will be looking out for that. But for now, this multi-attack feature alone is a really strong sign that King Art Games is thinking seriously about how Dawn of War 4 is going to feel to actually play. And if it works the way it sounds, it could make battles smoother, more tactical, and way more enjoyable, especially in larger fights. Now, one of the great things about having a YouTube channel is that videos often create discussions, and well, it's a chance for the community, that's you guys, to voice your opinions. So that's exactly what I want to do. I want to hear from you guys about what you think of these updates. Do you think the multi-attack dragbox system is going to be a game changer, or do you think it's just a small convenience feature? More importantly, is it a direction for the game that excites you, or actually, do you really want your micromanagement? Are you hyped for the WASD controls, or are you sticking with the classic edge scrolling forever? Let me know in the comment section below. Now, if you did enjoy this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, it really helps me out on the channel. But if you're interested in more Dawn of War updates, the video on the right of your screen right now is quite likely to scratch your itch. As always, take care and see you next time.